This is the second in 3 webinar series on the Tree Planting Action Challenge that Raleigh is running in partnership with the Woodland Trust. I'm going to kick off just by doing a little recap from last week and a quick overview of the Tree Planting Action Challenge. But what we're going to be focusing today on is aftercare plans for the trees that we're planting. We're going to be looking at fundraising, and most specifically, it's going to be around how to order the trees that will comprise your tree planting event. So just as a little recap, between the 1st of November and the 31st of December to mark COP26 and contribute to Raleigh International's Action Not Excuses campaign and the big climate fight back campaign that the Woodland Trust are spearheading, we're looking to mobilise around 75 tree planting events across the UK. And these tree planting events, the objectives of them are to both support the aims of these 2 campaigns, Action Not Excuses and the Big Climate Fight Back, to improve biodiversity and ecosystems in the UK, to mitigate against climate change, but also to undertake a mass action which supports the young people that we're working with in a number of different countries globally who are implementing and leading campaigns which address the climate and ecological crisis. And we are asking alumni and supporters to run their own tree planting events, planting between 30 and 105 trees each. So in the last webinar, we went through a kind of number of initial steps that anybody who wants to run a tree planting event will need to go through. The first of those is identifying the land that you're going to plant on. And we spoke about either looking at local council websites and getting in touch with tree planting officers through them to see if they have any available land. Also, schools and other institutions may well be amenable to small planting projects on their land, so it's always a good idea to get in touch with them. And finally, and often if you're in more rural areas, you might want to talk to farmers or other landowners who may have land that they would be willing to give over to woodland. We then spoke about measuring your plot of land. We said that the maximum number of trees that any one event can plant is 105, which equates to about 4 tennis courts. But you can do a smaller plot, which is about 30 trees, so that's about 1 tennis court. We talked about setting our objectives, so understanding why it is that we're planting trees. Is it to improve biodiversity? Is it to address land degradation in perhaps wetter areas and riparian areas? It could potentially be for harvesting forest products and stuff like that. And that setting your objectives in step 3 is a really important step to enable you to then select the right tree pack for you, which we would look a little bit more closely at today in terms of the process for ordering those trees. So, as I said, what we're going to be looking at today are sort of 2 main things. We're going to be thinking about the aftercare plan for our trees, because of course it's really important that once we've got our trees in the ground, they stay happy and they grow. So we'll be talking about some of the things that we need to ensure are in place for after our trees have been planted. And it's important for us to think about this before we order our trees, because of course we don't want to be ordering and planting trees that we're then not able to ensure can survive. And then we'll talk a little bit about planning for our events, thinking about when a good time to run events is. We'll also talk a little bit about the fundraising component of the challenge. And then we'll look at how to order our trees. And I suspect this is going to take probably about 20-25 minutes to kind of get through all of that stuff. As a recap, really briefly, if any of the stuff that I just mentioned around the first 4 initial steps that we spoke about in the previous webinar are new information for you, or you haven't yet had a chance to look at any of that stuff, you can go to actionnotexcuses.org and download our Tree Planting Action Challenge pack. And that takes you through the previous 4 steps that I've just mentioned, and of course the steps that I'm going to go through today, and the subsequent steps of the challenge that enable you to complete it. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is developing our aftercare plan. Now, obviously, as I said, this is really important in order to make sure that once we've planted our trees, they're properly looked after and they are able to thrive. Now, the aftercare plan is something that can sometimes make people worry a little bit about the amount of effort and time that's involved in sustaining the trees. It really isn't particularly heavy going in terms of the work that's required to look after the trees afterwards, but it is important we think both about who will undertake these activities and what specifically these activities are. Now, as with the rest of the Action Challenge Pack, as you work through it, there are various spaces that provide you with the opportunity to kind of just note down what approach you're taking, for example, in this case, to ensuring the sustainability of your trees. And we would advise that you go through your Action Challenge Pack and you do record this information as you go through, because when you come to order your trees using the online form, you'll be asked for this information. So it's really great to just have it all in one place so you can just whack it straight into your digital form. And that's a really nice and easy process. So for our aftercare plans, we need to kind of think about 2 time periods. The first is the period of about 1 to 3 years after the trees have been planted, when they're still relatively young. What are the tasks involved in ensuring that they're looked after in that period? And then as the trees grow and begin to mature more, we have this period between 3 to 10 years where the care requirements change a little bit to align with the change in the trees themselves. And what we ask through the Action Challenge Pack is, when you consider these different steps that you need to undertake, both in the first initial 3-year period and then in the latter 7-year period, that you think about when and how often the activities to sustain the trees need to take place, how you're going to organise those activities, and who's going to be responsible for undertaking these activities. Now, I'm going to deal with who first, or what group of individuals are going to be responsible for looking after the trees. I think there's often an assumption when people sign up to undertake the tree planting challenge that it is them who is going to be tied to those trees for a decade, looking after them and undertaking all of these tasks. That is, of course, not necessarily the case. We would say that the person organising the event has a responsibility to ensure that a plan is in place to look after the trees once they've been planted, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the person who's organising the tree planting event that takes on that responsibility. Really, the most sensible thing to do is to think about who has an overall responsibility for that land. So if you're going through a private landowner like a farmer, it would be important to ensure that they understood the care involved in looking after the trees once they were planted and took on a responsibility for that, often because it's private land and not just anyone can stroll onto it. Similarly, if you're talking to an institution like a school, perhaps this is an aftercare plan that you can put in place with students and teachers to ensure that the trees are looked after. And again, if you're going to be planting the trees in partnership with your local council, because these local council teams often have tree planting teams attached to them, it's worth discussing with them whether some of their team might be interested in looking after the trees afterwards as part of their overall responsibility for tree planting within the local authority. Of course, there may be opportunities, if you wish to be involved in the sustainability of the trees, for you yourself to get involved if you are running the event. But as I said, that's not 100% necessary. So there's far more detail that can be found about the different tasks that you need to undertake to look after your trees. And there is a link in the Action Challenge Pack to a page on the Woodland Trust website that talks about weeding, watering, mowing, etc., and gives you all the details that you need in order to ensure that you undertake these tasks properly. I'll just give you a very brief overview of what some of these tasks rather involve. Weeding is probably the most important step in giving your trees the best start in the first 1 to 3 years, because you want to make sure that nothing's encroaching on the growth of your tree. So we generally say that you want to keep about a 1 metre diameter around the tree, clear of weeds and grass, for the first 2 to 3 years or so. And there are lots of ways in which you can suppress weeds and stop them from growing. You can use mulch or bark or chips and stuff like that. You could also use chemical-based products such as glyphosate to kill the weeds by spraying around the base. And of course, pulling out any weeds that sort of crop up. When it comes to things like watering, It's probably fairly likely that your trees will adapt to natural conditions, so they shouldn't actually need watering particularly often. If there are particularly long dry spells, you might feel that watering is necessary, in which case you would just saturate the ground to ensure that water soaks deep into the soil. But by and large, planting in the UK, watering isn't something that you would normally need to do. All of the trees that you order are saplings, and they come with tree guards. And this is to protect the trees essentially from the elements and from other things whilst they're still young. Strong winds can blow these guards over, so you just need to make sure that the canes and the guards and the stakes are all upright and pushed firmly into the soil, and just every so often checking that they're still there. And we need to just keep our eyes out for pests as well that can cause damage to the tube. So need to check the tree stems and the guards for damage as well. So all of these things are relatively light touch. It really is just keeping an eye on the area, as someone would probably do if they had an overall responsibility for looking after their land anyway. In the sort of next period, so from 3 to 10 years, your trees will hopefully be growing nicely. They'll be getting a bit bigger. So that means it's time to remove the tree guards as soon as they start to split and before they disintegrate. They've done their job. And if you leave them on, they will just hamper growth. So we get rid of these at this point, and that's a one-time job. Tree guards are gone. Pruning is something that we recommend, but it's not essential. But it will encourage your trees to grow upwards rather than outwards. And that will enable you to help create a diverse canopy structure within your woodland. And it's always a good idea to do things like investing in a good pruning saw and making clean cuts close to the tree trunk. We also would advise coppicing. So as I said, more detail can be found about these things on the Woodland Trust website, but coppicing basically involves cutting a tree at its base, and this encourages new growth. It allows things like light to reach the woodland floor, and that helps other vegetation to flourish, like flowers. We generally don't suggest that you start coppicing your trees until sort of 7 to 10 years, but that will depend on the species and growth rate. And you would receive guidance on when the coppicing and the best time to coppice takes place when you receive your trees. And finally, you just need to keep your eye out for any kind of common diseases. They will rarely kill young trees. A particularly cold winter, for example, might result in frost damage, but your trees should recover. But as always, if you're concerned about how your trees are looking, you can get in touch with the Woodland Trust for any advice. And finally, thinning is usually done around year 10, so that's much, much later in the process. That then gives the remaining trees more room to sort of grow and develop. So as I said, there's loads of information on the Woodland Trust website about all of these things, but just to kind of hark back to the initial point that I made, the most important thing to consider is who's going to be undertaking these activities. They're not particularly long and arduous, but it's important to actually delineate that responsibility and ensure you have a plan in place before you order your trees. And indeed, the tree planting form will ask for a little bit of information around who will have access to the trees after they've been planted, and therefore who will have a responsibility for undertaking the aftercare activities. So that's that. That should be a fairly straightforward task, just involves sitting down with a pen and paper, having a little think, and having a chat to the people who are involved in the care of the land that you're planning to plant on. Once that's done, we can really then start thinking about planning for the event itself. Now, as I've said, we're really aiming for as many tree planting events between the 1st of November and the 31st of December as possible. We really want to sort of try and mobilise as many people and gain as much momentum and shout as loudly about this initiative as possible, which is why we're giving ourselves this short window. But we also want to use it as an opportunity to engage people in awareness around COP26, which is taking place in early November. But you obviously have a degree of choice within that window about when you choose to plant your trees. As I've said before, the average adult can probably plant about 12 trees in an hour. So there are a number of things to consider in order to have a successful tree planting event, whether it's in the morning or an afternoon or over a whole day. Choosing an appropriate date for the event is really important, obviously, to ensure that you can mobilise as many people as you need to come and support you to plant the trees. Try and pick a date that you think will encourage the highest number of people to get involved. We discussed last week that it might not be that everybody that attends the event is engaged in tree planting. It might be that they come along and support with fundraising. You might run other kind of things alongside the tree planting event. You might need people involved for catering. So it's really important just to think about who are your planters and when's the most appropriate day going to be for them to get involved. For example, a weekday might be particularly challenging if a lot of your planters are already working. Or if you are looking to plant on school land, if you want young people to be involved in those activities, it might be worth considering a weekday and negotiating with teachers around the engagement of school students to get involved in your tree planting event as well, particularly if they're going to have a responsibility for ultimate aftercare. So picking your day, really, really important. And when you come to the tree planting form, you will of course be asked what day your tree planting event is going to be held on. This is so that we can make sure that the trees are delivered to you in time for you to undertake your tree planting event. The trees can often and will often be delivered a little bit earlier, so a few days, perhaps a week or even maybe 2 weeks earlier. So you also just need to think about where you're going to store your trees in the period of time prior to the tree planting event. They can be kept in any kind of like outdoor covered area. We do not recommend they're kept inside where there's central heating because that will dry the trees out. A little note on tree planting events that people want to undertake in early November. So that is from the 1st to the 21st of November. If you want to run a tree planting event in this initial 3-week period, you need to get your tree order in by the 31st of August. So that's another couple of weeks until that tree order needs to be submitted. And that's just to give the Woodland Trust enough time to organise the procurement and the delivery of your trees. So just to repeat that, if you want to do your tree planting event in the first 3 weeks of November, you need to order your trees before the end of August. If you want to do your tree planting event from the 22nd of November onwards, you can order your trees at any point between like now and the end of September. So you've got a little bit longer for that period. But if you want to plant before the 21st of November, your order needs to be in before the end of this month. So there's one final thing that we ask you to do before you then go and use the tree order form to order your trees, and that is to organise your fundraising for the tree planting event. Now at this stage, the only person that really needs to set up their fundraising account for the tree planting event is the person that is organising the tree planting event, the person that is ordering the trees. Of course, once you fully engage and mobilise the other people that are going to be involved in the event, again, as we spoke about last week, it doesn't just have to fall on the person who is running the event to do all of the fundraising. In fact, we encourage anybody involved with the event to run their own fundraising, perhaps for a Just Giving page is what we recommend. But for the person who is organising the event, we ask that your Just Giving page and account is set up prior to you ordering the trees. It gives us the information in terms of how you're organising your fundraising, and it also means that we can support you in getting the word out about your fundraising initiative. I spoke last week at length about what the funding for the Tree Planting Challenge will contribute to. All of that information is available in the Tree Planting Action Pack. But just as a reminder, we have lots and lots of youth-led societies globally at the moment who have been working to design and lead their own campaigns and initiatives which tackle urgent environmental issues in the countries in which they live. These young people are volunteers, they do this in their own time. Their work is truly inspirational, and I would recommend for anybody that hasn't already done so to go on to the Action Not Excuses platform at actionnotexcuses.org and have a browse of some of these initiatives that young people are engaging in, because they really, really are very incredible. But of course, young people can't do this purely based on the kind of hours they have in the day to volunteer. They need funding in order to implement their initiatives and for their initiatives to have genuine impact on the places and the people that they are working to support. So anybody that engages in fundraising for the Tree Planting Challenge. That funding will be used to contribute to supporting young people through these campaigns and through other Raleigh environmental-led initiatives to continue taking action and creating environmental impact. Now, what we suggest is, this is absolutely not essential, but we think the easiest way to fundraise for the Tree Planting Action Challenge is to create a Just Giving account and get people to sponsor you through that, purely because by creating a Just Giving account, you can link it to Raleigh International and the funding will just be transferred directly to us via the Just Giving platform at the end of it. If you would rather fundraise in a different way, that is also absolutely fine, but to get a bit of advice on that, we suggest that you just send an email over to us at action.excuses@rallyinternational.org or treeplanting@rallyinternational.org, and we could advise you on the best way to do that if you don't want to use a Just Giving account. There's lots of guidance in the Tree Planting Action Challenge pack on how to set up a fundraising account on the Just Giving website. I've recently updated the Just Giving website to include an option to select an action challenge as an event to fundraise for. So if you were to go on there today, you might not see that because it takes a little bit of time to process. But over the next couple of days, everything that I'm about to discuss should be live on Just Giving and will enable you to set up an account really, really easily. You just go to the Just Giving website, justgiving.com, click on Start Fundraising. You'd select a charity and then you just search for Raleigh International Trust. There are some other charities that have Raleigh in their name, but it should be really, really clear who we are. If you're familiar with our kind of logo and branding, we're set up on there as Raleigh International Trust. And then once you've done that, you just need to select that your fundraising is taking part in an event, which is one of the menu of options available on the Just Giving website. And then once you've selected taking part in an event, there should be an option to select the Action Not Excuses Action Challenge, which you can see written there at step 6. As I said, I updated this about 24 hours ago, and it takes a couple of days just to kind of wake up and process. So if you can't find Action Not Excuses Action Challenge there now, don't worry, it should appear in the next 24 hours, and I'll be checking to make sure that that's all there and ready for you to set up your fundraising pages. And then you click and you create your page. It's a bit like a profile where you tell people all about the initiative that you're undertaking, and also, of course, what the fundraising and sponsorship will be contributing towards if people choose to sponsor you. Again, in the Action Challenge pack, we've got some tips there about the best way to set up your Just Giving page. It's not rocket science, but we recommend that you add photographs, either of yourself or perhaps some of the work that the young people are undertaking in the campaigns. All of that stuff is available on the Action Not Excuses website, and you can take it directly from there. Give your page a title, and it's always good to set yourself a target in terms of the amount of funds that you want to raise, because it gives people an idea of the sort of level of donation that they might want to make. And we also have included a bit of a blurb about Action Not Excuses, so some suggested copy that you can use if you would like to describe the overall tree planting initiative and the work that you're planning to undertake to support it, alongside the work that young people are undertaking, which we're going to be using the fundraising to support. Absolutely no pressure to use that copy. It's entirely up to you what you want to write there, but it just is there to make things a little bit easier for you if you would like to use it. So that's it on the Just Giving page. Your Just Giving page, therefore, should be set up and ready to go. And then again, this might seem relatively obvious, but you do need to publicise your fundraising efforts. You need to tell people this is what you're doing. Of course, you'll be probably doing a little bit of publicity around recruiting some planters for your tree planting events. We'll cover a bit around mobilising people to actually engage in your event in the next webinar. But as far as your fundraising efforts go, please do share far and wide. Again, in the Action Challenge pack on these pages around fundraising, there are a couple of links that take you to a Google Drive that has some fundraising media in it. So you can see here on the left, there's a little sponsor me kind of icon. This one in particular is for Instagram, but we've created similar things for all of the major kind of social media channels, so Facebook, LinkedIn and Twitter as well. So you can just download those directly and use them in support of your fundraising effort. But also, if you are running a tree planting event, it is quite possibly something that the local media might be really, really interested in. And any publicity of the work that we're doing around the Tree Planting Action Challenge, and more importantly, around the work that we do to support young people globally, is really, really great for us. It will support you, hopefully, with your fundraising, but it also hopefully will support to mobilise other people to want to get involved and help. So also in that folder, you will find a press release template with all of the information about the tree planting event in it, around what it is that we're looking to support around the Action Not Excuses campaign, just with a few bits highlighted in yellow that you can see here on the right that enable you to amend it so it caters specifically towards talking about the event that you are going to be running. So that is all available for download. And of course, if you want any support with your fundraising, again, just email us either at the tree planting website or at the Action Not Excuses website. Someone will pick it up and be in touch with you to support in any way we can with what it is that you're looking to do. Cool. So we've spoken about the aftercare plan that you're going to need to just put in place prior to your tree order. But as I said, that's pretty light touch. And we've spoken about you setting up your Just Giving page for fundraising. That means the big moment has now arrived. If you have worked through all of the other steps in the Action Challenge Pack, it is now time, finally, to order your trees. So I'm going to just talk you through really quickly the order form and how you go about doing this. So the order form can be accessed either through a direct link in your Action Challenge Pack that you can kind of see here in the top left-hand corner. This is taken directly from the Action Challenge Pack, and just click on that little white circle and it will open up the tree order form. Or you can go via the Tree Planting Challenge page on the Action Not Excuses platform, and about halfway down that page, smack bang in the middle, as you can see here, there is an image and a button underneath that says order your trees now. And so you just want to click on that and that will take you through to your order form. Now, as I said, the order form is dependent on you already having certain pieces of information that we need you to provide us with in order to kind of do two things, right? So the first is we need this information to process your tree order. We need to know who you are, where you want your trees delivered to, when your tree planting event is taking place, all that kind of stuff. But we also, of course, want to make sure that we and the Woodland Trust are doing our due diligence to ensure that you have had all the support that you require in making sure that your tree planting event and the trees have been planned in such a way that they are benefiting local biodiversity, that you have the relevant permissions to plant on that land, and that you've thought about how those trees are going to be looked after afterwards. So that's why we ask these questions. But if you have gone step by step through your Action Challenge Pack up until this point, and you've been recording the information as you go along in it, this is a super simple process, and really probably shouldn't take you more than about 15 minutes maximum to complete if you already have all of that information. So there are 3 pages on the Tree Planting Action Challenge order form. The first is just asking for your basic information, and so email address, phone number, etc. That's just so we can stay in touch with you once you've ordered your trees, and keep you informed about things like when you can expect them and stuff like that. So that's all pretty straightforward. The second page is where we then get into this kind of more due diligence-y stuff, both in terms of having permission to plant on the land that you're proposing to plant on, but also in terms of us knowing, you know, where your tree planting site is going to be. This is all stuff that you will have completed in step 1 of the Action Challenge. So we obviously ask you to tick a box to confirm that you have permission to plant from the legal landowner. We need a little bit of information about the legal landowner, so who they are, what the address is, what their telephone number is. We're pretty unlikely to use this, but it's just in case. And then what the grid reference of the land is that you want to plant on. You'll see in step 1 of the Action Challenge pack that there's a grid reference finder link that enables you to work out the grid reference based on the address of the land. So you would do that in step 1 and then just plug it in here. A little bit of information about whether the planting location is accessible to the public or not, and then a bit of information about who's actually able to access the site afterwards. So that's the second page. And then section 3, there is a bit more information on the second page around delivery times and stuff like that, but I won't go through all of that now because it's relatively self-explanatory. But section 3 is the bit that enables you to select the trees packs that you want for your planting event. So again, you really ought to have already gone through the process of selecting the most appropriate trees for you. On page 2 of the Tree Action Challenge order form, it does ask you to talk about what the objective of your tree planting event is. You'll remember that that was one of the things that we covered in the first webinar of setting an objective, and all of the guidance for that is in the Tree Planting Action Pack. And then, as I've mentioned previously, you've got 2 options in terms of the size of the packs that you select. You've either got a 30 sapling pack or a 105 sapling pack. Now, if you look sort of midway down this screenshot of the Tree Planting Action Challenge order form, you have a heading that says select your trees, brackets, you can only pick one type. So just to kind of be clear, these names correspond to the packs that are outlined in the Tree Planting Action Challenge pack. So hedge in the top left, which is currently selected, you can see on the page adjacent to this on the slide, hedge is a 30 tree pack, and copse is also a 30 tree pack. And then the other ones listed here, wild harvest, year-round colour, wildwood and working wood, are all 105 tree packs. So you should have already selected which one of these you want, or which ones of these you want. And then you will see at the bottom of the page, there is a space for number of packs. Again, as I mentioned last week, if you want, you can order multiple packs of 30. So you could order 2 or 3 hedge packs or 2 or 3 copse packs if you want. But once you've selected wild harvest or year-round colour, or one of the other larger packs, that option to state the number of packs that you want should disappear, because you can only have one of those, because 105 is the maximum number of trees that you can do in one order. The reason for that, just to recap again on what I said last week, is because the larger the volume of trees that you're planting, the more work needs to be undertaken in terms of running environmental impact assessments. These aren't necessarily particularly arduous processes. They are relatively straightforward, and indeed the Woodland Trust does give out larger packs, actually of up to about 400 trees at a time. If you are interested in running a larger tree planting event that isn't accommodated by the number of trees that we have on the Tree Planting Action Challenge order form, then just drop us an email, just send it to treeplanting@raleigheinternational.org, and we can have a conversation about the proposition for the larger site that you would need to plant the trees on, and the larger order. And just double check with you to see if there are any other things that we need to kind of tick off in terms of impact assessments before we process that order. So just to kind of make that a little bit clearer, if you did want to do a bigger tree planting project that is over 105 trees, you won't be able to use our Tree Planting Action Challenge order form, but don't let that put you off. Just drop us an email at treeplanting@raleigheinternational.org, just stating how many you want to plant and where roughly, and we'll then support you to kind of work with us and the Woodland Trust to see if we can help you run a larger event, because we absolutely don't want to put anyone off ambitious tree planting if that is appropriate for where they're planning their event. And that's it. And once you've entered all of that information, you just press submit. You'll receive an email confirming that your order has gone in. And what then happens is we share the information with the Woodland Trust. You get added to a recipient email list, and you will then receive a number of different updates that provide you with information around when you can expect to receive your trees. And nearer the day of your planting event, you'll get sort of more real-time information about when your tree planting order will be delivered. I did mention this earlier in the presentation, but I'll just say again, you do need to think about where you have your trees delivered to. It may not necessarily be appropriate to have them delivered directly to the site that you're planning on doing the tree planting on, unless there is space for storage there. You are going to need to think about storage of the trees. Again, if you go to the Woodland Trust website, you'll find information about how best to store the trees. And I believe there's also some information in the Action Challenge pack. But do not keep them indoors where there's central heating, as I said, because it will dry them out and damage them. And that's it. So really quick final recap from today. We've spoken about ensuring that adequate aftercare is in place for the trees once they've been planted. We've mentioned the importance of setting up our Just Giving fundraising page, and you will need to enter the Just Giving URL into this form when you submit it. So it's important to do that prior to doing your tree planting or filling out your tree planting form. And then finally, you can go to the Action Challenge order form via the website or via the link in the Action Challenge pack and get ordering. So that pretty much covers it for the procurement of your trees. In the next webinar, which we've moved, is going to be on, I think it's the 1st or the 2nd of September, but it's available, the time's available on the Action Not Excuses platform. We're going to cover the final steps of the Tree Planting Action Challenge. So we're going to be looking at how to best mobilise your planting team, how to really engage them in the challenge, how to brief them around sort of broader stuff to do with Action Not Excuses and get them involved in fundraising. What to do to prepare for the delivery of your trees and to prepare for the event itself. Step 7 is much closer to the day of planting. It could even be the day of planting or the day before. So preparing the area for the trees to be planted. And then step 8, the final step, which is planting day. And we'll also perhaps recap a little bit on those aftercare steps that you need to undertake after planting day. And that is it.